Hey everyone, this is smpratte, and it's time for the 25K/25th anniversary Q&A video. If you're new to the channel, how this works, it's typically a long-form podcast-style video. I took the top 25 questions. Actually, I think I took 30 because there were so many good questions you guys asked, rounded up, and I just give you my real-time response to those questions. I do this every single month in Patreon. Speaking of, we got the coconut water locked and loaded, no cap, ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the first question from Mr. Fred9999 says, do you think Pokemon TCG is dependent on the game's success, or will it thrive even if they stop making Pokemon games? I think that's a good question, and overall, I think the trading card game has proven that it's completely separate from what's going on in the video games. Now, is there overlap? Absolutely. I think when a new game comes out, it's one of those organic traffic deals, kind of like with Pokemon Go, or things in the secondary market like Logan Paul doing a video where you grab new people, they enter the market. That's definitely true for video games when they release. I think there's a lot of people who cross over, there's natural knowledge there that overlaps. But overall, they don't have to make games for the TCG to survive at this point. There's so many people that are completely disconnected from the games, and it's its own community, market, etc. And I just don't know a scenario where Pokemon wouldn't make a game. I think Sword and Shield broke a record recently. So, yeah, there's no indicator that's going to stop anytime soon. But, yeah, that's a good question. And I think overall, they could survive on its own. Next up, Rob says, do you feel that Japanese sets will ever get the attention that English sets do, like Shiny Star V versus Shining Fates? Do you think in the future people will move to collecting more Japanese, or will it always be a niche market less valued? So this is an interesting question that could be its own video. Why that is because there's so many aspects inside of this idea. So number one, Japan has its own market. And a lot of people from the West not only don't interact with it, they're completely naive about its existence at all. I remember in Patreon, like over a year ago, there was a player set that came up with like Umbreon, Espeon, all the gold stars, everything. And it was bought at a record price in Japan, ungraded, in like 24 hours. And that's because Japan has its own market. If you go to some of those big stores over there and you look at their buy lists, some of their buy lists are higher than what a lot of people are making offers over here in the West. So point being, it's not binary. In fact, a lot of the sets like Shiny V has done much better so far than its English counterpart. And it still to this day is the highest sold box on release. Like, that's just math. So therefore, it's not a black and white scenario. Something like CP6 versus Evolutions is another example. CP6 has outpaced Evolutions from the jump. To this day, it's more expensive than Evolutions. And more importantly, it's held a consistent trend where something like Evolutions was stagnant and then goes like this for a while. CP6 is just like that. Like, it's just saluting to the flag. So it's really tough to give an answer there. I think in general, for a lot of casual Western collectors, absolutely. English sets are definitely more popular than Japanese. But I can tell you, I'll be 100% candid with you, like, I've made a killing on Japanese card, millions and millions of dollars on just Japanese cards, because there's an entire market over there. There's more barrier to entry. And point being is that it's not black or white. There's a lot of cards, things like this, that don't exist at all in English. There's a lot of activity over in Japan that, if you're not aware of it, you're not going to be able to tap into that opportunity. So that's the whole answer there. But yes, in the focus of sets, I would say English definitely has more interest, but Japanese is still more than fine. I sell out of my stuff at like some of the highest prices on eBay within a week of my Japanese sets. So there you go. Just trying to throw all that data at you to give you a full answer, but that's a good question. Next up, Mike says, are there any new card games that have impressed you or you're thinking about getting into? I saw, like, DBS is one that comes to mind. I'm not big on it because, to me, I grew up with Dragon Ball Z and I like it. Always gonna be nostalgic for it, but it's just too flat. Like, Pokemon is so deep and dynamic. You can have people that have like a value for like certain species in Pokemon or an era and things like that. And there's just so much going on. There's so many Pokemon. But yeah, there's nothing really that tempts me as much. I still do sports on the side. I do Magic on the side. I do Pokemon. I do video games like once in a blue moon. But overall, yeah, there really isn't a TCG that's flirted with me enough, that's given me enough, to really go deep into. I've bought a couple cards here and there with like some like DBS or something like that. But to me, it's like those are so far away from like Pokemon, Magic, sports. So yeah, there's nothing right now that I can think of. I even bought some Final Fantasy when it dropped, but even that, it's like, it's okay. I'm curious to see what Digimon's gonna do, but I'm not holding my breath. I just think that like the next Pokemon is Pokemon, basically. Next up, Ascended Bit of you're in Patreon and public, getting a 2-for-1 this month. Hey Scott, what were some of your most memorable binder sets that you've collected? Which ones do you find yourself flipping through more often than others? Congrats on 25K, you deserve it. Thank you, Bidoof. That's a tough one to answer because binders are like my go-to, like in my downtime. And I say this all the time for people, people who are in a rut, they don't know what to do. They're the way. Like binders are the answer. So like I have a vending one that I look at a lot. My base set one I've probably looked at the most, where it's like first edition Shadowless Unlimited. And I've done a couple videos, probably need to do another one for 25th anniversary. And that one I probably look at the most, because back in the day, first edition base wasn't a thing when I grew up. And still to this day, when I see Shadowless card, I'm like, oh my God, that's Shadowless. So I've looked at that one probably the most. I have all the WotC stuff in binders, and I'll go through those occasionally. And yeah, honestly, putting them together, the base one was tough. The Neo one was really tough. Neo Destiny was really tough because I set parameters. I'm like, okay, I want everything to be at least near mint. First edition Neo Destiny is scarce. So that was one that took a while to put together, but it was fun. The chase was really rewarding. I can still remember buying some of those cards and like how much I paid. So yeah, it's tough to give one answer, but that's probably the general breakdown. Derek says, what would you like to see in the 25th anniversary set coming out later in this year? So if I worked for Pokemon or was consulting for Pokemon, number one, we'd get a Pikablue card. Pikablue would happen. We'd make it happen. Like, they have the power. They could do it. To me, that'd be awesome. Like, to see some type of throwback, to a time. Another idea, couple ideas. You heard it here first. Southern Island 2. So what you'll do is take the other Pokemon, there's like Poliwhirl sitting there on the beach, Pikachu sitting in the background, Charizard flying by, and you do like a separate shot. So you have like the same idea, like 18 cards or whatever, but like a different perspective with the other Pokemon in the background. I think that'd be awesome. Another one, a Pokemon Snap set. They need to make it happen. We got the new game coming out. Back in the day, they missed a big opportunity. They should have done like all 3 cards in a set, like Mew's a secret rare, Charizard's a holo, like just get me behind the wheel, Pokemon. Like, I'll make it happen. But yeah, those would be some of the ideas I'd like to see them do at any point in time. But yeah, 25th anniversary would be a good excuse. Next up, Steven says, when will we see a new Scumbag Pratt video? The last one was hilarious. The world needs this. I need this. So it's back here next to the Chunky Donkeys. That's no coincidence. I don't know what topic to do. That's the problem. Like, I'm not a cynical person, and like when I do those, it's usually like tongue in cheek, like joking about something that's going on. So yeah, I don't know. If people have ideas for Scumbag Pratt, maybe I'll consider it. Like, give me your ideas in the comments. Maybe I'll think about it and dust off the hat. But yeah, in general, I try to stay happy and avoid the negative stuff. So I haven't really like put a lot of thought into it. Next up, speaking of, right on time, someone's named Shitbag1 says, hey Pratt, what's your diet like? Also, what is your favorite Sega Genesis game? So you can't see because like the camera zoom, but I have Sonic 2, Sonic and Knuckles sealed up here. Those are a couple games. Sonic 2 was actually the first game I had as a kid, like first game on a console. So definitely anything Sonic. You can see him kind of sitting off screen over here. That was a big one. Yeah, that's tough. Probably Sonic and Knuckles Sonic 3. I've probably played that game. I don't know how many times I beat that game. At least 50 times. I have it on every platform, like Genesis, I had it on GameCube, have it on Xbox, have it on PC, like on Steam. I've played through that game so many times, and I'll do it again. So yeah, probably that one. That's definitely the most played game. As for my diet, got to get my sponsor here, coconut water. This is a meme, by the way, for the non-Patreon people. My diet usually on a good day is like muesli in the morning, some type of like protein, veggies, something in the evening, or like dinner, and then I'll do maybe a small meal again. And typically that's because I'm trying to exercise almost every day. Usually I run a couple miles a day or something like that, or I'll play hockey like 2 to 3 times a week. And yeah, so it depends on how much I do. Like on a hockey day, it's crazy. I'll have to like add protein at a meal because you burn like 1,000 calories. But yeah, that's on a good day. It's usually like muesli, nice, maybe like a crock pot meal, or I cook like something, chicken with some veggies, something like that, and then in the evening something small. Try to do the best I can. But yeah, if I exercise, it's just more. I'm not the best. It's moderately healthy. I would say it would passing grade. Next up, Vintage Pokemon Hunter says, how much longer can YouTubers and Twitch streamers open these vintage boxes before it's unrealistic? Do you believe the price of WotC cards will be untouchable to the normal person within 5 years? So this, again, could be its own topic, its own video. This is something a lot of people have been saying for a long time. If you go back to like 2018, 17 even, people were saying the same thing. And as long as this model works, as long as, these guys like PokeRev or whoever it is have a customer base that's willing to pay for these packs, I think it's just going to keep happening. What's the indicator that's going to stop? When you're saying things like untouchable for the normal person, I don't know. I need a little more math behind that because I don't really know what the normal person is anymore in Pokemon. I don't know who this is geared towards, because when you're talking about things like collectibles, sure, there's Pikachu on there. Yes, it's a nice warm fuzzy feeling, but we're definitely catering to a luxury good market. Like, that's what this is. These are non-essential luxury goods at the end of the day, as seen in the Logan Paul video, my 4 seconds of fame. So I don't know how to answer that because I don't know what like normal means, and a kid can't afford them, sure. Someone in college, maybe make or break, I'm not sure. But what you got to understand is Pokemon still has the lowest market cap. When you climb up the ladder, I think we've passed Magic. There's definitely some esoteric cards in Magic that probably beat out Pokemon with certain grades and all that. But sports especially is a whole other like league universe. Like, that's why I would say sperm the sperm whale. Pokemon's still like a Poliwag figuring out its footing. Go look at the market cap for sports. Like our most expensive card in Pokemon is not even close to what sports is doing. And then of course you have things like art that are above that, coins and comics and all that other stuff. So point being is that when you look at these older hobbies, the indicator is that these prices aren't at a max point yet. What you got to understand Pokemon is it's a very young audience. One of the best, there's a guy on E4, I mispronounce his name all the time, Jonah Deck. It's like John A. Deck or something like that. That guy's such a breath of fresh air. And he's someone from Magic who came over, and one of the best things he said is that there's a lot of cards in Pokemon that should be worth a lot more. But the reality is a lot of people are so young that the average discretionary income isn't high enough yet. And I think that's such a sharp observation because, again, when you look at these other markets, the market cap is so much greater, where Pokemon is a lot lower. So why I'm saying all that is I don't see an indicator yet for, this box break method to slow down. Until you have people that struggle selling those packs, I think that would be an indicator that's like, okay, we're hitting a point where people are price fatigued. They don't want to spend, the cost of capital is too high. They don't want to spend it on this. They want to put it somewhere else. That's when I think you start to see an indicator. But so far, it's really full steam ahead. And there's a lot of people today doing this. Like, there's a lot of guys doing it. And there's a lot of money out there in the internet world, in the interwebs. There's a lot. You got people throwing around in NFTs and digital things now. So there's a lot of people are trying to put cash into stuff, and just, again, throwing all those indicators out there that in the short term, I don't see it slowing down. So there's my take. But good question. That could be its own video. Next up, Dustin says, what is your opinion on Heart Gold, Soul Silver sets? I feel like they have some of the best artwork, but they aren't that appreciated. So Heart Gold, Soul Silver was a flash in the pan. What's really interesting when you think about with Heart Gold, Soul Silver is like it got its own TCG when it was like a video game based era, kind of tying in the previous question about the overlap with video games and TCG. That was Heart Gold, Soul Silver. Like, it had an overlap where like you had the recent Ruby Sapphire, remake, and it didn't have really anything going on in the TCG. So that's an interesting moment in the hobby. With that said, organically speaking at the time, because my boomer self was around back then, people weren't super excited about Heart Gold, Soul Silver. I would say objectively, Diamond and Pearl and HGSS was like the low point of that era, and there just wasn't a lot going on. You came up, ironically, EX was a low point, and like a lot of people left, like myself, were in high school trying to be a cool guy, and during that EX era, you just had an exodus of collectors. but the EX sets are so well designed. Like you have EX cards, the reverse hollow is the best in my opinion because it's not really reverse hollow. Gold stars, of course. Where with Heart Gold Soul Silver, it's like, yeah, you got legend cards. Primes are okay, but they're like a toned down gold star. Like a gold star is like, it was like a downgrade for sure. I think level X was like kind of an EX. All right, it wasn't as strong in my opinion. And then primes were not as strong as either one. So yeah, it was an interesting time for the hobby. It was a flash in the pan. I know people who do like it. I know people who ride or die by it, but you could say that about anything in Pokemon. Like I know like a friggin' like Pidgey collector. You can pick any Pokemon, there's someone who collects it. But yeah, it's definitely a niche time. Now with that said, tying in some of these other ideas, maybe if there's box break fatigue or certain price points are phased out, people might go to those, which I think has already happened. Like I think the Heart Gold Soul Silver has already increased in price, because of that mentality. So yeah, overall, that's my take on it. Organically, at the time, there wasn't that much interest, but maybe there'll be some type of resurgence. Call of Legends is one that no one cared about it, and then all of a sudden now it's big stonks, and a lot of people like the Shining cards, but for like a decade, nobody talked about Call of Legends. So same with Legendary Collection. So yeah, you never know. Markets are dynamic, but there you go. That's my take on it. Aaron says, what are your thoughts on PSA recognizing fourth base or base 2000? Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's legitimate enough. Kind of tying in the Heart Gold Soul Silver question, it's definitely a niche. Like base 2000's for sure niche. Sorry, base 2000 collectors, but it is. It's not going to ever be as strong, even as like Unlimited, in my opinion. Unlimited, of course, has so much more. Base 2000's technically the last print of Unlimited, but you know what I mean. Like overall, it's a variant. Base is a lot of variants, but yeah, it's cool because I think it also like adds a layer like to Magic where you have like Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, Revised, Fourth, or whatever. I think it's cool because it really makes that even more of a strong parallel because, it definitely has a difference. Like it's brighter. Yeah, the copyright, like Vulpix is different. But yeah, I think it's always going to be something that's much more niche than the other base variants. Next up, we got PFM. I'll take a sponsored sip for this one. Hello, sir. Tip my fedora back at you, PFM. Too many Pokemon YouTubers just make the same type of videos with the $ open mouth investing box opening theme. In your opinion, what genre of content is lacking from YouTube Pokemon scene? Thanks, PFM. Yeah, that's a super good question. Yeah, I remember when I started doing videos like 4 or however many years ago it is now, that was my frustration. I didn't like doing the hands in front of the camera. Of course, there's a time and place for it, but that's all you had. All you had were like guys just ripping packs, and you still do. But nobody was talking into the camera. Nobody was talking about the hobby. So now you have a lot of that. And tying in your point about the open mouth investing box opening thing, it's gone that way as well. And, part of me is like, okay, well, that's what the general public wants to see. It's much easier to bring in people to a video that's really short and straight to the point and says, buy this card because it's going to give you money. Like, that brings in a lot of people where someone like me discussing for an hour or whatever, like really deep state knowledge is not going to be as palpable or more palatable. And anyway, I think that's the reason is that you have like the general audience, like Modern, for example, is the biggest pool like wide of collectors, because it hits everybody. It hits the casual people going into Target, and those are the guys who they're going to watch the pack openings. They're going to do whatever. Yeah, for me personally, for someone like you, I'd like to see more people talk about like the stories behind cards or, the information behind releases and talking about the identity of cards and eras and things like that. Even like that question about Heart Gold Soul Silver, it's like I'm naturally just going back to the time and explaining and comparing and contrasting. I think that's where like the soul of the hobby exists. But of course, it's not as marketable as like, freaking out with the mouth open. You will never catch me dead doing the mouth open thumbnail ever. I'm that thing. Like I'm the opposite end of that spectrum. But you can see the opportunity costs. Like I get a lot of concentrated high end interest. Like my Patreon is by far like the highest end in the hobby, like bar none. But I don't get that casual group. And you look at guys like Leon Hart on the other side of the fence. They get a lot of that casual group, but they don't get a lot of the high end. So it's kind of like a pick your poison deal. Those are both sides of it. But that side over there with like the blue check mark and all that, yeah, that's just the biggest casual demographic. And anyway, kind of getting a little a little long-winded here, but tying it back in, I think overall it'd just be really cool. Like there's some of the stuff even that you do, like the really specific, like getting into the details, like of these cards, like talking about Grand Party, talking about the Trainer Bee Blastoise or whatever card it is, and going deep into that, I think is so cool, like a Did You Know Gaming thing. But of course, it's probably not gonna get as many views. It's not as like, mass appealing. And of course, like you're basically running a charity for anyone who's like gainfully employed. It's a lot of time to do that. I can't even don't even have time to edit videos, so I can't imagine what that would be like. But there you go. There's my long-winded answer to your really good question. I could talk about that forever because it's been true for a long time. It's been like this since like 2016, 17, 18, and today it's just on steroids. Like there's so many guys ripping and flipping packs and telling you what gold star is going to be the next whatever thing. So yeah, I think that's the overview that I have. There you go. Moving along. Hayden says, what are your thoughts on NFT virtual collectibles? Logan Paul saw a bunch of virtual cards during his last live stream. All right, I'm probably going to rustle some jimmies on this one. Talked about it on Discord one night. I thought about making a video, but it's tough because I see on one hand, there's a demand for something like this, just like with crypto. Crypto's one of those things, when you go back to my videos from like 4 years ago, I tried to look at the positives. Crypto's great for countries where their currency is all around. But at the end of the day, it's a speculative investment. NFT is like at the time, I was like, crypto's great because it makes collectibles look less speculative. Now NFTs like hold my digital beer that you're going to pay for. It's like, I cannot believe how speculative NFTs are. And there's a lot of like Wall Street bets, get rich quick out there in the internet, like whatever you want to call it, ethos. It's just out there. And, it's at the end of the day, adults spending their money and doing what they want. It's their choice. I don't think it's a good long-term investment. I don't even think you could call it an investment. I think it's just fast money flippage. I think it's just another way to get that like dopamine flip, scalp, whatever you want to call it type thing. And more specifically, it's only people like Logan Paul or whoever has a following that can do this stuff successfully. If you took like random guy off the street, they can't successfully create an NFT. So I think what that does is it highlights that it's not really driven on an organic interest. It's driven from a top-down model of like, hey, buy this because you might be able to make money. And again, if you're an adult, you want to do that, more power to you, but I don't think it's a sound investment. I think it's a very short-term speculative, like, kind of like people who trade options and things like that. That's what like buoys the market at the end of the day. It's because there's so much option trading going on. That's what NFTs just remind me of, except on steroids. It's like, what are you investing in? I get the whole digital art thing. I hear that, and I would say like the other side of the coin, if I had to be optimistic about it, the NBA one, someone who is releasing this that's actually a company that can, if Pokemon did it somehow, I think that would work much better than, some YouTuber or someone like that, because at least this company has like an IP. We'll go even deeper. We're going to give you a full answer here, Hayden. One of the things I noticed, like not picking on Logan Paul because he's one of many, but people who do these NFTs, they blur things like copyright and stuff that you couldn't do physically. Like if I wanted to do an NFT and I'm like putting my like Scumbag Pratt face in a digital Pokemon card, that's probably going to be fine because, it's a digital thing that's like a little more subjective. But if I try to make that physically, game over. Like Pokemon's like, see ya. Like it's game over because there's rules for that. But this whole digital space is so unregulated that like you can imply that this is a Pokemon card when you don't really own the IP for it. You can really imply a lot of things because it's digitally. And yeah, there's a lot of, it's very, very Wild West unregulated right now. So it's something I'm definitely not throwing money at whatsoever. It's just one of those things that me personally, I don't have the time to keep up with all these short-term quick things going on. So I'd rather just lock it in like idle cash. I'd rather put that into something long-term that I don't have to worry about. But yeah, it's a wait and see. Crypto's really proven a lot of people wrong. I just don't see the necessity behind these. And I'm sure there's going to be some that rise up, like the NBA example I talked about. There's going to be some that rise up and stand the test of time. But right now, it's just pure Wild West. People even joke with me, like, do an NFT of your Patreon videos or do an NFT of like some, you have some knowledge, I have knowledge of some release or something and make that into an NFT. And it's like, I'm so boomer, I don't even know what any of that means. So anyway, it's an interesting thing. Maybe I'll do a video on it and talk about it a little bit more. But as for a long-term investment or investment in general, I don't think it classifies. I think it classifies as more of like a flip, money, quick, short-term type thing. Like basically trading options type deal. All right, next up, I'm gonna try to pronounce this best of my ability. Keondray Simmons says, if you were in charge of creating the next anniversary set for Pokemon, what would you do and what Pokemon would be in it? Basically, kind of a repeat of earlier. This was definitely a common question that a lot of people ask, got a lot of upvotes. And yeah, just love to see something. Pokemon Snap set, I think, would be such a fantastic idea. An even better idea. Like, if you could do some type of contest, and you don't even have to make it like the God Tier Rarity one they did back in the day. I think making it even like a vending deal where it's like, okay, you get your card in a set, maybe give them a unique prize card or unique trophy or something along with it. I think that'd be great. But yeah, even an Art Academy would be good. I think that'd be cool too with like the Snap set. I think there's just a lot of potential with the Pokemon Snap game coming out with the 25th anniversary. I think that'd be a fantastic design. I heard there's also going to be a Pokemon Go game, trading card game thing. So if that happens, I think that's also a really good idea. I think it's great to always combine forces. There's a lot of people, a lot of boomers out there who play Pokemon Go. No surprise for people who play the game, but like, I think it'd be cool to see that cross over because you'd probably bring some of those people in. They'd be interested in, collect those cards and maybe get into other stuff too. So yeah, I think doing something like that. Also, of course, if we're really like filling in the wish list here, the Mario Pikachu mentality, like do that. Like just give me like a Donkey Kong Snorlax or something. Like just give me something like that, like a Zelda Pikachu. I don't know, just anything. Like anything like that is just like, it's just a home run idea. Like Mario Pikachu is one of the best things that's ever happened. Scream promos are another one. Something in that like vein, I think would be so cool. I think it's just such a great idea. Those are some of the best cards. Like I have literally ordered a 5-card UV. I'm pointing over here because I have like memorabilia on the wall. Frame for my Scream set that I'm gonna put up because it's so beautiful. It's like 11 out of 10. So anyway, those are my answers. If I were behind the wheel, I'd make it happen. I do, man. If I can get into Pokemon and just like sets, there would never be a bad set. There would never be a bad set. So anyway, that's my answer. We've talked forever about that one, but there you go. Moving along, MB1 says, why isn't Nishida talked about more as an illustrator? She's credited as a designer of Pikachu and so many other fan favorite Pokemon and the illustrator of the Illustrator card. Her Pikachu from Expedition is stunning and seems significant as it's the end of an original era when they thought it might be the end of Pokemon. Congrats on 25K. Yeah, you've asked a really good question that other serious collectors have thought about. And this is a good example of the contrast between like the mouth open casual viewer versus like some really, really detailed information. So Nishida designed Pikachu, like talk about a resume booster. Japan is just such a different mentality. Like they don't market themselves at all. They're so low key. When people talk about when's Sugimori gonna do another signing, it's like, dude, these people are so low key. Like they're so low key. So Nishida is in the conversation of Arita, Sugimori for me, Himeno, without a doubt. Like without a doubt. And yeah, it's one of those things where, she's just a very minimal person. It's PFM the other day was actually joking like how his Instagram account has like maybe 1,000 followers or something, and that's more than like Nishida, the creator of like the most recognizable character in the history of man. Like Pikachu's more recognizable now than like friggin' Mickey Mouse. So I don't get it. Like I don't understand. Like she should definitely get more cred, but I think it just goes back to that mentality in Japan where it's like it's all just about work and producing something, and you don't really market yourself as much. They don't. Nishida's not selling her swag or her merch on her Instagram. It's just not that. It's not in their culture, and I think she deserves a lot more recognition. I don't know, what the proper form of that is, but yeah, I absolutely agree. Like she's definitely up there with the top dogs, like Arita, Sugimori, all of them, like without a doubt. So yeah, for people who didn't know, Nishida designed Pikachu, and a lot of other guys, like if it's like you really have to search for it, but a lot of these artists design certain Pokemon. Like that's, to me, that's unbelievable. Like I think long term and already that's like such a cool like honor or whatever to be able to say you designed Mickey Mouse or something. Like that's so crazy. So anyway, yeah, I can say a lot about it. There you go. Nishida's up there in the S tier of illustrators. Long Matt Silver says, what's your opinion on collecting Japanese compared to English with the card prices being so different, such as gold stars, so much less in Japanese? Very good question. Japanese gold stars for a long time were one of my underrated options in Patreon. It was actually one of my examples for the AP ratio, one of the models or one of the general like analytical like breakdowns that I use to ascertain value or like, assess value. It's something that has proven itself hand over fist over time. It's a general investment strategy. And yeah, the Japanese gold stars are a perfect example of the AP ratio. You had so many in Japan that were sitting over there, ungraded at the same price as graded over in the US. And it's like clearly there's an incongruency there. So as for, English versus Japanese, this ties in the question earlier about, English versus Japanese demand. Gold stars are a great example of something where the English definitely has way more demand because it's just one of those set cards that people are like bonkers about, like, and for good reason. It's such a good concept. But yeah, there's a lot of value in Japanese. It's just simply a cheaper option for most items. Of course, you have the exceptions like players promos and things like that. But overall, yeah, I think they're fine. I think some of them actually look better with like the silver border. Some of them do. Rayquaza comes to mind. It kind of clashes with the yellow, where silver it looks a little more sleek. But at the end of the day, that's just the breakdown. Like you have, I think, more demand with English for gold stars than you do with Japanese, and also because the barrier to entry for a lot of that stuff, unless it's on eBay, most people who are buying gold stars are not going to bother with the Japanese hole in the wall sites. So I think that's the overview, is that English has more demand, it's more accessible, they can find it in their local stores, their like card shops and things like that, where Japanese is, I think, more relegated to Japan, and it's probably going to be that way for the foreseeable future. Next up, Choke says the final price of the PWC Illustrator did not meet the expectation of many people, even when it's PS7 grade, and it's taken into account and ended lower around the range of some other cards in the hobby, like PS10 Top Sun, Pro Stoys, and PS10 First Edition Charizard. In your opinion, do you think the Illustrator still deserves the title of the most valuable card in the hobby? Yes, by far. Number one, it sold for more than the Pro Stoys, so that's wrong. Number two, it's a PSA 7. There's no PSA 7 Pokemon card that is sold for more than that Illustrator. There's a lot of weird goalposts like moving from people who will probably never own any of these cards mentioned. And there's probably channels dedicated where people have these very high self-important opinions on cards that they not only can't afford and will never own and have no history with. And it's odd to see so much vitriol and hate towards something that is just so dead obvious. And more importantly, to really dig deep into this, you had the one that Steve Aoki bought from Japan ungraded for $420K. You haven't had a comp sell. When you're talking about the Top Sun Charizard, that's a Pop 1 card, PSA 10. Like, where's the PSA 9 Illustrator that sold in modern time? More specifically, the PWCC, which has been confirmed, like the whole process was super cumbersome. I talked about this in Patreon, how I was denied. Like, they asked me like for bank statement. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I've literally owned and sold more Illustrators than any other person on the planet. And it's like, sure, I'm not qualified. It's just, and I remember afterwards, like this is really deep state, but like one of my patrons works for PWCC and he's like, yeah, this is ridiculous. That never should have happened. So point being is that, yeah, I think the process was part of that price point. But regardless, even if you don't want to value that, it's the highest sold PSA 7 Pokemon card, period. And I think, people who are trying to like always, there's guys who've been trying to like dismantle the Illustrator for like, it's their career at this point. Like, I don't know how they function with all that salt in their veins. But yeah, I mean, it's PSA 7, sold more than any other PSA 7 Pokemon card. Wait for a PSA 9 to come up. I doubt it will because the private offers are better. That's another thing you got to understand, is that I have record sales for cards going back to 2018 that haven't been surpassed. I have 7-figure deals that are contracted with NDAs because they happened years ago, and this stuff goes behind the scenes. There's no point in putting it out there publicly. So that's the other thing you got to consider. This is not just Pokemon. Mickey Mantle rookies go this way. Honus Wagner cards go this way. So yeah, I guess for the people who, again, not trying to pick on these guys, but the guys who have these like outlandish opinions and these self-important opinions who, they see one auction or they have like partial data points. It's like, you guys are literally talking about the like tip of the iceberg. Like, you have no idea what goes on behind the scenes, and even with that information, it's still wrong. So there you go. When you get a comp, when you get a PSA 9 Illustrator in auction, and if it would hit this price, which it probably wouldn't, but if it hit that price, I think it's more of a valid argument. But until then, I don't see any validity in that argument. And more importantly, if you look at sales over time and volume of sales and calculate that all together, It's not even close. Tyrant says 10 to 20 years in the future, do you think WotC favorites such as Articuno, Dragonite, Gengar will have better value in slabs with lower grades under PSA 7 versus if they were kept raw? That's a good question. Tying in one of the other questions about binders, one of the things I remember doing with those binders is that I would crack a lot of cards that were already graded because there's this weird disconnect with people where they're like, oh, I don't want a PSA 6 or 7. And it's like, you're literally getting a verified near mint copy for like a lower percentage of an ungraded one that's like light played or something. So yeah, there's a weird disconnect there. Like that happens in every hobby. I see it in Magic too when I'm doing my alpha binder. It's like, I'll see cards that are like 7 or 8 that are like the same price as like an ungraded, and it's like I want an ungraded for my binder, but I'm like, I'm just gonna get the 7 or 8 because it's the same price. So yeah, it's just a matter of time. You know, if you went back like 5 years, 7 years, especially, you had guys that wouldn't even think of anything under PSA 10. Now it's like you gotta be like a multi-millionaire, beyond like a decamillionaire at this point, if you just want to do PSA 10. And even then, I don't even think it's possible. You're gonna hit those huge roadblocks like T17, first edition base Charizard. Go down the line of like all those really hard to grade cards or really expensive cards. So yeah, I think it's just a natural progression of cost of capital. It's not unique to Pokemon. Just like all these questions, just like Choke's question about most valuable cards and things like that. There's a lot of patterns in collectibles that are so universal, and this is one of them. You know, graded cards, it's just a number at the end of the day. People really need to understand that. Like, there's an odd emotional prejudice with certain people because they're like PSA blank or bust. It used to be 10, and now it's 9, now it's 8, you know. So yeah, it's just entirely a grade. It's literally just a condition qualifier. That's all it is. And I think it's just a matter of time. I personally would never not grade a card that wasn't PSA 7 at this point. I can't think of a card that I wouldn't grade unless you're talking like an energy card or something like that. But most chase cards, promo cards, like majority of the stuff I'm buying, PSA 7 all day. All day. Even like an Ancient Mew, I don't care what it is. Like PSA 7 to me is a good grade. And again, tying in that knowledge from other markets, PSA 7 in sports is fantastic. Like, think about a PSA 7 Mickey Mantle rookie. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, PSA 7's always been high grade. It's just Pokemon's been so spoiled. You know, final point here. You're getting a full answer here. If you go to like Troll and Toad and you look at their condition, what is the condition category? What's the best condition option they typically offer for an ungraded card? Near mint. What's near mint? PSA 7. So there you go. It's just a matter of time, and it's already here for a lot of the other cards. Next up, Nike Swoosh says, do you think the price spread between graded and raw cards will narrow over time? Please discuss. It's kind of tying into the previous question there. Yeah, it's going to be something that will always have a relationship. There's a lot of reason why people buy one over the other. You know, like I was talking about binders, and binders are something where obviously you're doing ungraded, but you know, you can also crack graded cards. What's interesting to me, like if we go back to 2017, I remember screaming from the mountaintops, especially in Patreon, WotC PSA 9s were like, they were so underrated that I got tired of saying it. You know, it was ridiculous. And what was interesting about that time is that you had PSA 9 WotC Hollows, $30, $50, somewhere in there. And then you'd seen an ungraded one in like light play condition for like almost the same price. I'm like, this is insanity. So my point is that you don't always have a rational relationship between graded and ungraded. You know, it's not a binary. Maybe certain sets and certain eras will. But overall, I think people are going to start to understand the landscape better. Things move so much quicker today. The market self-regulates so much faster than ever today. So yeah, I think it will narrow over time in general. It already has much more than it used to be. But yeah, of course, certain sets like Modern, for example, that's one where it's like a lot of Modern cards are genuinely packed fresh. Like when Shining Fates came out, it's like, what's the worst you could do to it? You know, it just came out. So yeah, Modern's a different ballgame. But for Vintage, I think a lot of it self-regulates faster than ever. And I think that'll be even more true moving forward. Hogda says, is there a Pokemon card that you hate? Ooh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I don't know. I really don't know. Pokemon, I thought about like Patrat. So Patrat has a Pokemon card. Can't stand them. But yeah, I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't know if there's one that I hate. I just love the hobby so much. Like, I don't think there's any that I'd like. Sure, there's some that I'm just like, oh, okay, it's all right. But I don't really think I hate any of them. Man, that's a good question. I don't know. I really don't think there is one. Maybe there's like general. Of course, a lot of people don't like energies. I guess that's like so like obvious though, yeah, I can't think of one. If I think of one while I'm talking, I'll come back to it. But yeah, I don't really think there's one that I hate. There's just like some that I don't like as much, basically. Okay, next up, vintage, Vincent. My Pokemon brain is like, oh, vintage, it has to be. Vincent, will you do any interviews with other PokeTubers? If yes, who? If not, why? So I get asked this all the time, and the number one reason is time. Like, literally time. I'd love to do more content, in general. I'd love to talk to you guys every day if I could. I just simply don't have any time. I'm lucky when I'm getting 8 hours of sleep these days. There's so many branches now in the smpratte empire that I don't know, what, even in the next year, I'm like, how am I going to maintain all this stuff? So yeah, I simply don't have the time. That's the biggest overall answer. The other small partial answer inside of that is I'm a very private person. I'm a very minimal person. I'm borderline reclusive at times. Judging by my grandma house, you can tell. I'm just that type of person where I really like keeping to myself. I don't like sharing a lot of my life unless it's one of those things like, there's upside to it. That's what you got to understand. Like, privacy is something that only goes one way. It's not something where you can pull it back. And I personally just like to keep that separate. And a lot of people know that, even people in the hobby, they know that very well. And I appreciate the people who respect that boundary too, because I think that's the way it should be. I think that's how it should be. You should let people, share what they want to share and respect that. So yeah, that's really my general answer there. It's a mixture of time. I'm pretty private. Of course I love talking about the hobby, but there's guys like PFM is like one of my favorite people in the hobby. We have this weird, same name, weird connection, a lot of things, but even that, it's like there's people I'd like to just talk to in general, just hang out and talk, and it's hard to even find the time to do that, just to literally like talk and hang out. So there's my take on that. Like, again, people ask this all the time. I'd love to like hang out with Rudy and do something with him. I think we're like kindred spirits in a lot of ways. Maybe it'll happen one day. I don't know if Rudy lets me in, but yeah, that's my answer on the question. Next up, speaking of Rudy, Alpha Stoutland says, hey there, I'm sure someone's going to ask who your favorite Pokemon is, so I'll take a step further and ask, who's your favorite shiny Pokemon? Ooh, that's good. So recently I finally caught Shiny Ponyta in Pokemon Go. As a lot of people know, that was one I've been like pining for. Finally got Shiny Ponyta. I don't know why. To me, Shiny Ponyta and Rapidash, don't really care much for them in general, but the shinies are like S tier. Like, the shinies are unreal for Shiny Ponyta and Rapidash. And it's crazy because I'm just like, all right, they're decent Pokemon, but the shiny is just unreal. Like, the Rapidash looks like a freaking storm cloud. It's unbelievable. So yeah, those are some that come to mind. Favorite overall is tough though. That's really tough. There's so many good ones. What I like the most about shinies recently is like the difference, like speaking of Rapidash, the difference between gold shinies versus like after gold and silver. So what I mean is like some of the Pokemon like Charizard was purple and gold and then black from Gen 3 onward. That's why in like Neo Destiny it's a purple color because it was actually purple back then. Rapidash is another one. Rapidash had purple flames in gold and then went to like the gray stormy cloud thing afterwards. I think Vileplume was also different. There were a couple others in there, but yeah, that's like one of the things I've really, not that you asked, but one of the things I've gotten into with shiny Pokemon lately. But yeah, it's tough to name. Just like with cards I hate, it's tough to name a favorite. Bulba691 or 669 says, what's your thoughts on Hidden Fates? Has it been reprinted to death so that singles won't be a good long-term investment? Yeah, there's been more supply. Like, I have some Hidden Fates ETBs collecting dust. They probably could have stonked if I would have flipped them at an earlier time. And they're just sitting in deep storage and I don't care. Like, I'm not going to look at them for like 5 years. So I did that with Evolutions too. Like, everyone's like trying to win their $30 profit or like their 10% margin on Evolutions over the past 4 years. And I just let them sit. And why I'm saying that is because too many people are focused so much on short term. Like, I'm going to be really blunt with everybody. Like, if you're saying the word investment, long-term investment, and you aren't thinking 5 years minimum plus, you're not talking long-term investment. You're just talking short-term flips. Short-term flips can even be within a year or so. Like, that's still very short-term. Like, that's nothing. Go back to the recent crash that we had, the COVID crash, almost a year ago now. If you only see the short term, you would have lost a lot of money. Just like the housing crash, the best analogy I like is buy at the highest point before a crash. whether it's COVID or the housing crash. Buy any main stock, like S&P, whatever it is. You are doing much better today if you held. So that's the whole point of a long-term investment. Same with something like Pokemon. Hidden Fates to me has a lot of fundamentals. It's always a fun set to open. Hidden Fates was just like Evolutions, where I am just buying groceries at Target. I'm like, oh, they got a Hidden Fates. I'm going to buy and open it for fun because it's a good set. I'm not going to do that with Fates Collide. I'm not going to do that with Steam Siege. Definitely not Crimson Invasion. But I will with Hidden Fates because it has good fundamentals. It's got a lot of fun in the set. It's got a lot of cards. You know, people ask me what are fundamentals. I think that's just it. A lot of exciting things going on in the set. You know, a lot of mixture of rarity, mixture of challenge, mixture of art. Hidden Fates has that. So Evolutions was printed more than anyone can possibly imagine. It was printed in X and Y. It was printed in Sun and Moon. It was printed in Sword and Shield. And it still increased in price. So again, I don't like to be someone who's like, oh, it's guaranteed or whatever. But, you know, considering all that data, considering all those indicators, yeah, I think Hidden Fates is a good set. And I'm not worried about the short-term price. Like I said, I could have flipped it probably for more money. I don't care. You know, that's not how you should look if you're concerned about long term. It's just always going to be a fun set to open, whether there's a lot of it available or it's very scarce. You know, if anything, why it's being reprinted is because they're still trying to catch demand and they haven't. You know, just like with Evolutions. Why there's so much Evolutions is because there's so much demand. You know, that's the answer. So there you go. Very good question. Next up, Splat Ventures says, do you think scalpers are taking nostalgic experiences away from the next generation Pokemon fans? Do you think that could harm the hobby long term? Yes and no. This is also another good discussion point because scalpers are very noisy, they're very loud, they're very unbecoming, they're very, for lack of a better term, just douchey. Like some of them are just scummy, and you know, they do things that are like the ridiculous stuff I see like on TikTok or something where grown men are going in, opening up like Cinnamon Toast Crunch to take out like a free a pack of cards. Like, come on. Like, that's me. It's like those moms who like steal candy. You know, the people who steal candy that's sitting out there in a bowl. Like, that's what it's like. It's like stealing trick-or-treat candy from kids. It's just so pathetic. Like, that level of stuff is just inexcusably pathetic. But yeah, I don't understand it. I hope it goes away over time. And it's just because of this, like, everybody's starved right now. There's so much demand and not enough product. But the other side of that you gotta understand is kids just enjoy anything. Like when I was growing up during the original 90s boom, a lot of the times you wouldn't even have WotC stuff in the stores. Like I definitely had Base Unlimited at Toys R Us all day. But like if I went to a store like Grandpa Pigeons or something like that, there's a throwback. You know, something that just didn't really carry much Pokemon stuff, they'd have like the Tops or like the off-brand things. And a lot of people were happy with that. You know, there's like the whole Tops market now for that stuff. And to me, that was always like the stuff you bought when WotC wasn't there. But my point is that kids are just excited to see cards. Like I remember one time when I was in a train, actually train between places in Italy, there was some kid who busted out these cards. And why I think it's cool is because it's like an entirely different country, different culture. This kid busted out his cards. And he's like going through counting all of them. And he's like looking around, like doing this, just being a kid. And like, he's looking through stuff that like, these damaged common cards and stuff. And that's like his favorite stuff right there. It's like a lot of bulk that adults wouldn't really care about, but for him, that was like, that's everything for him. So anyway, yeah, I think that's what a lot of kids grew up with. That's what I grew up with. I don't think a kid should or even deserves like a Shining Charizard. If they pull one, great. But like, I don't think as a kid I had any business owning a first edition base Charizard. Like that'd be ridiculous. Like I maybe could spend $10 a week as a kid for my like cat sitting money or something. That's what I should have bought, as something in that range. And sure, if I hit a Charizard, that's awesome. But anyway, my point is that like a lot of this stuff that's out there, like kids are just happy with anything. So that's what a lot of people got to understand, is that optimism at the end of the day with kids, they have like eternal optimism. And I, of course, would love to have product on the shelves for them. One of the things I thought about doing, but it's so hard to secure product with anyone, is like when the McDonald's craze was going on, I thought about buying a case and just doing a giveaway and telling people, hey, if you work in a hospital, if you work in a school, just show me your identification or something and I'll just send this stuff to you for free. And then you can give it to your students or whatever. I thought about doing that, but it's like, even then it's hard. Like I talked to these scalpers basically who have these cases and they're like, no, I want 700. I'm like, okay. And they're like, okay, now think about it. Now I want 850. And I'm like, okay. And like, now I want 1,000. Just like, just even getting the product is so tiring at this point. So even people like me who are trying to curb that behavior, it's really tough right now, and I feel it. Like, I feel the frustration for sure. But overall, with the news of new printers coming, I think when more products out there, kind of tying in the previous question about hidden fates, we're already seeing it. There's more product that's bringing the price down. That's all you can do is add more supply to lower the price. Now you can buy hidden fates. Now kids can open hidden fates. So I think that's the answer at the end of the day. Outside of all this pontificating about scalpers, I think that's the answer, is that whenever we get that more supply, which I think is coming, it'll really like douse the scalper, whatever. It'll eliminate a lot of that activity. Next up, Thomas says, was this Thomas from Patreon a while back? Thomas says, what do you think will happen to vintage booster boxes in 20 years? Ooh. Man. Well, my overall answer, my short answer is they're just going to be more vintage. That's my overall answer. That's what I would say in writing. That'd be my final answer, is that they're just going to be more vintage. I think that's the biggest answer. Like, tying in all these other questions, I'm so long-term focused, I don't care about the short-term at all. I just don't care about it. And so why I'm saying that is because I don't concern myself with like short-term fluctuations and things like that. So when I say that over 20 years, it's only going to be more vintage, I'm already at a point when I look at first edition base, I'm like, oh my God, this is first edition base. I didn't have that mentality when I started. I started back in this like 2006 or something. First edition base was what, 7 years old? So I'm just like, oh yeah, that's first edition base, whatever. Back then it's like you didn't even have all the gold stars out yet. So it was a different identity. And why I'm saying that is because fast forward to today, when I look at first edition base, I'm like, this is first edition base. Like, it's just ridiculous, like how that historical value has matured over time. And I think that's the answer for vintage boxes. I think that's just the general overview. I can't predict and say like, oh, this one's going to do this one's going to do that. Of course, there's definitely a lot of analytics in each box that I could sit here for hours on end telling you which box has more scarcity, gradability issues, etc., etc. But overall, I think the answer is in 20 years, they're just going to be more vintage. And I think that first edition base analogy, even for myself, the same person over time, that mentality changes because, first edition base became more vintage. And I think that's what's just naturally going to happen. Next up, Seth says, how do you balance what you hold versus what you sell? Obviously, having cash is important if you're dealing with limited funding, but from a pure ROI perspective, it seems like holding creates more profit long term. Really enjoy your channel and hope everything's going great. All right, Seth, I'm going to go hard on this one for you. I'm going to go deep into this one for you. I just talked about this yesterday with my brother about the value discussion. Millionaire Next Door, which I usually keep under here at all times, like the Bible for financial literacy. A lot of people ask me this. So like, how did you do what you do without selling? How did you hold these really expensive cards so long? Number one, decrease your expenses. I know you want like a literal answer of like, what do you decide versus hold versus selling? And this is the foundation. You need to be as minimal as possible. The less expenses you have, the better off you'll be. And why I'm saying that is because you don't have to worry about what to sell ROI. You don't have to worry if your Hidden Fates box sells for $250 instead of $100. None of that matters because you're acquiring the best stuff in the hobby or better items and better value options because your expenses are so low and your income flow is more consistent and more widespread. I know guys who've been around just as long as me and their stream of income is like a gutter trickle. Like they have like over these years, because they have all these things that they value and it's opportunity cost at the end of the day. I have friends that have blown like their entire savings to live by an ocean. That's real. That's a real story. I know people who are on their second house that are in debt on their first house. And it's like that stuff is what's going to stop you and put you in this mentality where it's like you got to sell. So why I'm saying this is the biggest pro tip, the biggest big brain, like alpha place to be, whatever you want to call it, is you don't need to sell. Like when people come to me and they're like, oh, what would you take for this card? I'm like, you're not going to get it. Like, I'm going to buy it. Like when people, Tropical Wind is a perfect example. I have people come to me all the time, what would you sell Tropical Wind for? It's like, I don't even have a price right now. And I've been buying that thing at record prices because I just don't care. I think it has more upside to it. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is. And I just don't care. Like, I don't care. So I don't put myself in a position where I need to sell. Now, when you're asking, should you sell a modern card versus a vintage card, like finding the right time? Yeah, the general thing is modern is short-term flip, long-term dip. And that's what it's been for a while. But of course, markets are dynamic. I was saying that a couple years ago, and the landscape has drastically changed from modern. So point being is that you could sit here and worrying about the micro, which is what this question is at the end of the day, like worrying about the micro moments of like, should I sell this? Should I hold this? For me, what I tend to do is I try to sell things I only have doubles of. And again, I don't put myself in a pressure cooker where I need to sell. That's the best advice I can give you. The grandma house thing that I'm always like subtly joking with people is I'm clearly living well under my means, or I have for a very long time. And because of that, I was able to increase my net worth and my personal wealth and have more financial freedom because of that. And now it's like I can basically do whatever I want because you grind it out, and it's not unique to me. Gary Vee's the same deal. A lot of entrepreneurs, it's the same thing. Warren Buffett's the same thing. And these guys are like the big dogs. Like, again, I'm sperm whale. But I'm trying, again, I warned you, I was going to go hard on this one because that's the thing people don't want to do. They don't want to make that sacrifice when they're younger and, cut the cost of going to bars and all that nonsense. Like, there's not much added value there. There's a way to get the same value of socializing without blowing $100 on a tab, and I think that's the mentality you got to keep. So to answer your question, I'm basically giving you a better perspective rather than worrying about when to sell, all that. Like, that's for the big open mouth channels to tell you, because and I don't care how Maz it sounds, it's like none of them are even close to me. None of them, and I'm sperm whale. Rudy's like, if I'm sperm whale, Rudy's like the sperm whale. And it's like, look at what this guy shares with everybody for free. Like, he gives people this knowledge for free, and it's like a lot of people just want to be a Timmy. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, there's my little rant. Told you I was gonna go hard on it because I think people need to stop worrying about, when's the right time to sell and worry about more about decreasing their costs, because then you don't have to worry. You don't have to hit every home run because that's not going to happen. Having a mentality of like when to sell, when to hold is not going to work. Like, my general breakdown is, sell quickly what you can reacquire quickly, sell slowly what you reacquire slowly. I think that's the only answer you can give here. But overall, the bigger answer to this is decrease your expenses as much as possible so you don't have to worry about this. Because your batting average is never going to be perfect. You're not always going to hit a home run. And that's okay. So like when you sell something that doesn't do well, it's okay because you're not underwater. So anyway, there's my answer, Seth. I don't know if you wanted that full on, like going deep into it, but I had to because I see that as a bigger issue than like worrying about the hold versus selling. But the general answer, which I say all the time in Patreon to people and when I do calls with people, is that, sell frequently what you can reacquire frequently and sell slowly what you can, what you reacquire slowly. Last few questions here. Rich Manisser, don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. What makes a Pokemon set fundamentally strong? This is a good question. A lot of people ask me this because I say the word fundamentals. A lot of tongue-in-cheek dad jokes about like being fun. You can't spell fundamentals without fun, but that's really the answer. When you look at a lot of the most successful toys, like go to Kenner Star Wars and things like that, when you look at the guys who executed those type of things, the Richard Garfields and things like that, like there are fundamentals that go into the product. There is some type of design that works. There's a lot of very sharp people who are involved in like Wizards of the Coast still to this day. There's another one, Rosewater. I don't know if I remember watching one of his presentations he did, like top 12, this is horrible. Short-term memory's fading. But like top 12 reasons why something's successfully collectible or something like that. And that's where the real answer is at the end of the day. It's a lot of variety and what, mixture of rarity and what people like and tapping into what people like. You can only do that when you're engaged. And going back to that Star Wars Kenner analogy, the owner of that company would always just be like, what is the fun factor? What is that? Kind of like the movie Big, where they have like a kid as an adult who goes, and it's great because it's like you could see what kids enjoy and what they actually care about. And that's, I think, the real answer at the end of the day is like Hidden Fates has fundamentals because you have Charizard, Mewtwo, Umbreon, all these shining cards, even the half art cards. There's a lot of mixture in there. There's a lot of variety in there. There's a lot of excitement in there. Where if you go to something that's the opposite of that, I think the worst set ever is Emerging Powers. Try to find me 5 exciting cards in Emerging Powers. You will you will have a heart attack trying to do it. Like, it is absolutely infuriating trying to find 5 exciting cards in Emerging Powers because it's just a terrible set. It has poor fundamentals. Crimson Invasion is very similar. Low fundamentals, high print quantity. So yeah, that's it. Evolutions is a good fundamental set. I think I'm just trying to throw examples at you so you get a feel for it, because it's not one of those things that you say, oh, here's the equation for it and it just works, because it's ultimately an impression judgment. But a lot of people who've been collecting a long time, they get it. Why people adore Cao Cao, for example. Cao Cao's a very new artist, very popular artist. Why? Because her designs are so just like nostalgic and they're new. Like it looks like that old hand-drawn style, very quaint, very poignant. Everyone who understands that feels what I'm saying right now. They're like, oh yeah, Cao Cao's like the real deal. So that's another example of something that I think would classify as like a fundamental. I do that dad joke where you can't spell fundamental without fun, and that's a really big part of the equation. If that set is not fun to open, it's probably not going to have good fundamentals. So that's my, again, analysis on it. It's not a quadratic formula, but there's definitely a lot of truth to that emotional assessment. Next up, Side Duke, we got last two here. You get to have your own Pokemon card, your art, or you could have your favorite artist draw a concept for you. What type of card do you choose to make? Trophy, promo, art academy, you control all the copies, set card, etc. Do you release it only in single language? Other languages, what is the card type and concept? Vending Voltorb meets Southern Island. Yeah, you pretty much highlighted it. Like, that would be what it would be. Like some hand-drawn thing like Vending or Southern Island, Kamiya, probably Fukuyama's. I don't know. That's too much. That's too much power. That's too much excitement. I don't know. That'd be really hard. That'd be really hard to choose one card. I think if I had to choose one that like I think would be universally enjoyed, because of course, like if you want a one-to-one very personalized thing, kind of like the Ishihara GX or the Yamato wedding card or something like that, yeah, that'd be very special for me. But I think something that other people could appreciate would be like the Southern Island 2 set. I think that's a fantastic idea. I think it'd be just a home run because it'd tap into like the nostalgic side, of course, for the original generation. Yeah, I think something like that would be really cool. Or even doing another Southern Island style set. Maybe there's an island in Pokemon Snap coming out and they do something like that, like having the Pokemon in the background. That set just has such a carefree attitude to it. It's like really well hand-drawn. Back then you didn't have Pokemon in the background. That was such a big deal. Like I know a lot of people who grew up with it are feeling that right now. It's like that was such a big deal back then. So yeah, that's probably what I'd do. Something like Southern Island. Yeah, something along those lines. Or I'd really try to like tie in as much meaning and themes as I could into a set. Really tie it all together, like combine the area and the artwork and the background so it makes like a big mosaic, something like that. Really try to do something creative and add like a lore to it and just go put all in. Like try to put everything in there. But yeah, it'd be some mini set like Southern Island. That way everyone can appreciate it. All right, last but not least, Geist says, how have the changes in Pokemon market over the last year changed your Pokemon investing strategies? That's a good one to end on because it's something you can ask me at any point in time. You could ask me when I started, when I spent $30 on a Southern Island binder. You could ask me when I started selling on eBay in 2009. You can ask me when I chose to do this full time in 2012. You can ask me in 2014 or 13, I guess, when I started selling an Illustrator, these really high-end cards. You can ask me at any point in time, and the answer is going to be the same. Adaptation. Adaptation is the answer. I don't care what's going on in the market. I mean that wholeheartedly. I don't care if it's up in the moon, down in the mantle or the core, whatever the opposite is. I don't care. I do not care. I'm going to adapt to whatever happens. I'm going to do and enjoy the hobby and try to find a way to balance that out. Now, is it much harder today? Is there much more opportunity? Absolutely. There's opportunity like bursting at the seams. And, you got to figure out and be okay accepting that you're not going to capitalize on every opportunity. You're not going to carpe diem. You're not going to seize every carp. There's going to be a lot of stuff that you just won't be able to do. And for someone like me who has like opportunity like everywhere, it's hard to even maintain a lot of the profit models I have within the hobby. So that's probably my answer for what you're asking for now, is that, it's tough to stay on top of every single thing, and you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with like, okay, I'm going to enjoy my life today and not try to make money, because that's what it's like being an entrepreneur. It's just you. There's no boss. There's no company above me. It's just me. If I don't perform, there's no income coming in. So that pressure's always there. But like I was saying before about, you could ask me at any point in time when I was making a lot less money, when I wasn't even selling on eBay, at any point in the timeline, the general answer is the same, is that you just adapt. and you move with the tides. I talked about this in the Logan Paul video. I think it's a good thing to remind everyone with. There's a lot of noise today. There's a lot of negativity today. There's a lot of opinions and self-important ideas out there today. There's even people who have full-blown YouTube channels that have no business saying what they're saying, but that's the war we're in. We're in a place now where you'll have straight up just nonsense. Like, people will say straight up nonsense. Like, if you send some card in to whatever grading company and give them $50, they'll give you a better grade. It's like, what? Like, I'm not joking. Like, people say this kind of absolute, like, just complete nonsense. Like, that's what I'm talking about. The level of, like, noise that's out there now is louder and more abundant than ever. So you got to pick your poison. You got to find, where the value is at the end of the day. And I think a lot of people who are seasoned really understand that. A lot of the calls I do with people, that's one of the things they tell me about. And it gives me that exposure because I don't see it personally. Like, I only see E4 and Patreon. That's about it. And like, when I hear these stories of like these discords where like the gossip and like the flip strategies and the scalp strategies, I'm like, dude, just remove yourself from that. And that's, I'm just trying to give that advice for the current collector today, is that you got to really navigate noise much more than you used to. Back in like 2007, 9, 2012, hobby was very small, it was very insulated. You didn't really have even social media, guys talking into a camera, any of that stuff. Discord didn't exist. A lot of this stuff didn't exist. So you didn't really have to avoid the noise. It was a different style of adapting, where today I think that's going to be your biggest nemesis, trying to be successful today in the market. So for anybody, as a collector or someone who's trying to make money out of it, as a collector, to maintain happiness and enjoy it, you got to ignore a lot of that noise. And, as someone who's trying to make money, you also got to ignore a lot of that noise. So that's my answer for adapting real time. It's always moving. The market's always moving. You got to stay on top of that and do your best. But again, right now, you're not going to get every opportunity. You're not going to hit every home run. That's okay. Because the market is so fast, there's so much opportunity, it's so large that it's impossible. Even the big guys or the top guys in the hobby, they still don't have 1,000 batting average. Nobody does. So that's what I give to you. And again, you got to adapt no matter what's going on in the market. And that's why I've made it here 15 years later, because that's what I've done at any point in time. So there it is. That's the public Q&A, guys. This is kind of a preview of what I do in Patreon. I do it every single month. I typically do like around 50 questions in Patreon every month, and those are super sharp. These questions were very good. Patreon is very sharp. Like, a lot of those questions are just like, it's unreal, the knowledge and discussion that goes on in there. And to try and be as objective as possible, you're talking like the highest end buyers. Like, a lot of my consignments I do end up going from one Patreon member to another through eBay. So again, if this is something you like, I do it every single month. It's so much fun. I'll try to do these peripherally, like publicly, like every once in a while, when I hit like a new threshold or something, or find a reason to do it. So there it is. You know the deal. Let me know how I feel. Hopefully this was useful. A lot of knowledge, long discussion. There you go. Happy 25th anniversary, guys. Appreciate the support. Gotta say that as well. Glad I made it 25K. I know I'm a niche and a niche and a niche. Definitely a niche channel. But I really appreciate the support. There it is. You know the deal. Let me know how I feel. Till next time.